being with us. Let's welcome Jim.
Mary said she's more or less my godmother 2 times over. She sponsored me twice. So how could I turn this down even though I'm not a speaker by any stretch of the imagination? A little bit about myself. I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, back in the 50s. And graduate of Pennsbury High School in 1971, graduate of Clarence State College, class of 1976. I joined the Army shortly after graduating college. Spent 3 years regular Army, including a year in Germany. And then I got out and spent 2 years in the Army Reserve. Then a friend of mine talked me into, he said, you gotta join the Air Guard. So I moved over to the Air National Guard and spent the rest of my career, 30 years total, including a year during Operation Rocky Freedom. And I'll preface what I'm saying, I don't have a drop of Ukrainian blood in my body, so you're probably wondering, well, why I get involved in this. But many of you probably know I'm married to, my wife is from Ukraine. She's from a town called Mykolaiv, which is one of the first towns that got hit during the invasion. And basically this whole thing started, she has two children that were living over there. Her one son is a police officer in the city of Mykolaiv. So naturally when it hit the fan, he's part of the self-defense force in Mykolaiv. Now they were still in touch, believe it or not, despite all the bombing and all the devastation over there, you could still get a phone call over there, back and forth, either through Skype or Viber or whatever. One of the things that he asked, he says, is there any way that you could send us some protective gear like body armor or helmets? And I was kind of taken aback by that. I thought with all the armament that we're sending over there that they have everything they need, but it's not the case. At least this is in the early stages of the war. So we went online and we ordered some body armor, some Kevlar helmets. He also asked, said, is there any way you can get hold of some night vision goggles and stuff like that? Because his job is to patrol the streets of Mykolaiv, and it was well known that Russian soldiers were infiltrating the city, trying to cause a few, mischief and all that good stuff. So we took care of that, and then bought a few other odds and ends, and we were going to ship it over, but we were a little concerned about whether or not it would get there. If we sent it through one of these relief agencies, it would get over there, but we couldn't say for certain it would end up in Mykolaiv. It'll get into the supply chain, but despite the heroism and they're really great people over there is corruption. So we decided the best way to make sure that he gets this in his hands is to take it over there. So we basically packed 4 suitcases loaded with all this stuff. In addition to all the other, we also bought knee pads, gloves. I currently work at Fort Indiantown Gap, and being retired military, I have access to the military clothing supply store. So I cleaned out their shelves with knee pads, tactical gloves, protective eyewear, and that type of stuff. So basically, we loaded up four bags. We were allowed each 2. We flew Turkish Air to Istanbul, and from Istanbul to Bucharest, Romania. The reason we selected Bucharest, Romania is because it's the closest place we can get to Mykolaiv. We couldn't go to Moldova because they said the airport was shut down. That would have been the closest place. So we flew into Bucharest, then we took a 6-hour train from Bucharest to the nearest town that had a railhead to the border. From there, we secured a taxi cab to the border. And maybe I can try to incorporate a few photos while we're... Oh, great, I'm not connected. I don't have to be connected, there we go. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the what we were dealing with in terms of this isn't working. There we go. That's my wife packing her suitcases, and it was quite a challenge because we took a lot of stuff with us. I'm going to try to take this. Jumped the gun there. That's finally finished the suitcase. That's my wife Elena. I think some of you have met her. That's me getting all loaded up. This is actually the second trip. We went over there twice, but that's me on the airplane. This is in no particular order, unfortunately.
Jim, when you flew over there, was it part of a military flight that you took, or is it?
No, it was civilian. We flew Turkish Air, and
Okay.
I've flown Space A flights out of Dover in the past, but that was purely for pleasure. I have to minimize this thing and able to drag it over. Technical difficulty. That's Istanbul Airport there. That's the train station. We were going from Bucharest, flying over there. Now this is a sample of all the, again, this is actually our second trip. I got this out of order. These are what they call tactical combat medical kits. I ran into, when we were coming back from the crossing the border back from Ukraine to Romania, I heard some English stuff behind me, and it was American English. So I said, oh, okay. Turned around, there were three young guys talking, and we struck up a conversation. Turns out they were pretty much doing the same thing we were doing on a different scale. They bought up as much medical supplies they could get. They just took it across, handed it over to the Ukrainian army, and then they were coming back. And this one young guy, he suggested, because we were talking about maybe doing this again, he did a GoFundMe page and raised a lot of money, which helped him to do what he wanted to do. So when we got back, I set up the same thing and got in touch with my friends down in Delaware and up here, and ended up raising, it went pretty well, raised about $5,000, which, believe it or not, still wasn't enough to cover it. So we borrowed, just took care of everything else out of our pocket. These are things that the soldiers carry in the battle. It's basically first aid kit for the tacticals. It's a step above the AAA car first aid kit, I can assure you. And the tourniquets, the whole 9 yards. And they didn't have that with them. And each one is $170 a pop. So, like I was saying, it was a very expensive proposition. But my brother, he sent me contribution. These are knee pads over there. That's a complete kit that's opened up. You can see all the different supplies that are with it. That's a knee pad. What we did was he said, put it out there that, for anybody that sends me a check for $170, we will personalize the first aid kit. So what we did, that's my brother, Paul Fretts, and his wife, Zilpha. They live in Alabama. So we did that for quite a few people. And it says, from Paul, Zilpha Fretts, glory to Ukraine. So we did that to many of them. It's my other brother, John and Joyce. Again, that's my wife finishing packing, cramming everything in there. And then I continued on. But anyway, so we flew back. Everything went beautifully. I mean, we flew from JFK. I'll be honest with you, going through TSA and thing, I was a little bit worried because we had body armor and night vision goggles, both of which we've been hearing all kinds of stories. You can't export, you can't, this, that, and the other, because it's combat related. So I had the body armor in my backpack because it was so heavy. put the suitcase overweight. So we got through the metal detector, and I'm looking back, and you know how you put your thing on the conveyor and it goes through, and I'm watching this guy who's got the X-ray thing up there, and he's looking at it. I could see, he could see it. And then he pushed the button and it came forward. So I was very relieved at that. The night vision goggles, we just hid in the suitcase. There was no problem. So, but beyond that, we flew to Istanbul, no problem. Connecting flight to Bucharest, no problem. We took the train to the train station. Our next train that we were going was coming in 20 minutes. We jumped on the thing. Everything went beautifully. My wife's brother Taras, he called and set up a taxi to pick us up at the train station. Drove us about a 40-minute drive to the border, and then we just got all our bags and we literally walked across the border. They had soldiers there, of course, and things of that nature. Her brother met us there in this tiny little car. Somehow we crammed everything in there. I don't know how. And then we made it to Chernivtsi, which is where they're staying. They fled Mykolaiv with their 2 kids because, again, to avoid all the bombardment and everything like that. A church put them up in an apartment in Chernivtsi. It's with 3 other families, so it was pretty tight. And so we stayed with them for a couple of days. So it was a great opportunity for my wife to see her relatives as well. This is the airport. This is where we're going through customs to get into Ukraine. This is the border, as you can see, welcome to Ukraine. It's my wife getting ready to go across. That's the train we took. A little bit tight. It was comfortable enough, you know. So, and this on the border, apparently there are a number of wonderful organizations that are helping. At this time, refugees were just streaming across the border, and these are all, you see World Central Kitchen. There's all kinds. There was one tent that was set up for if you had a pet, if you're bringing your dog across, you could feed your pet and all that good stuff. It was wonderful. It was pretty amazing, So that's a video. That's the taxi bringing us to the border, as you can see. I think that's where the pets, they keep the pets, take care of the pets coming across and everything like that. So, but it was an amazing operation they have there. So anyway, we made it across and dropped our stuff off. They got it. My brother-in-law made arrangements to take it down to, which is about 300 or 400 miles from Chernivtsi. And so we got back home, and we decided we can do more. And that's when we got another thing together. That's where I got those combat medical kits I actually took over on our second trip. And my wife, this time I only had 2 suitcases. I went by myself. My wife said it was just too much for her to go a second time. So I just retraced my steps. Did basically the same thing, except I flew out of Dulles instead of JFK. I hate flying out of JFK, but basically it was more the same. Made it over there. Again, everything went really, really well as far as getting there and back, even though I had about an 8-hour layover in Istanbul coming back. But let's see, make sure I've covered all my bases. So anyway, so we took all that stuff over, and again, they send it all over. Just as an interesting side note, my wife was telling me about her son, who he had a few close calls. I won't go into all the details, but he had a couple of really close calls. And but we bought a night vision, the first time night vision goggles, and then the second time there was an infrared type, basically the same thing, so you can see at night. And he says he's the most popular guy in Ukraine among his fellow soldiers, because anytime they go out on a patrol at night, they come to him to borrow his night vision goggles, and then they go out. That's how critically important that is. So, let me see if I have anything else I can throw in here. And I want to, as a final photo op, I want to show you the results of our, show that our mission bore fruit. This is my wife's son, Maxime. He's the one that sent us. He was, like I said, being a police officer dressed in black. See the knee pads, the body armor that we sent over. He's wearing the infrared goggles, which has a cover on it on the top, and basically everything we brought. And we also he spread it around among his other teammates. This, I have to admit, this is actually his father. I don't know if you can tell. There's quite a resemblance there. He's in the tank corps. I think he drives a tank or something like that. But he's wearing everything: the goggles we brought, the helmet. There's the medical, tactical medical gear, the knee pads, and they really appreciate it. I can tell you that. This one, again, he's holding, a little bit of what we gave them. There's the medical kit, the knee pads, the eye protection, and then these guys just came off of a patrol. That's the vehicle behind them is where they came back, and he gave them out some more of the stuff that we took over. So it was very fulfilling to see, that, and gave us a lot of peace of mind, what have you. And another side note, I mentioned that she has a daughter. She fled. She lived and worked in Odessa at the time, and they started again sending guided missiles, cruise missiles into Odessa. She fled to Moldova, and then from there, a friend of a friend had a place in Greece. They were able to stay for the last few months until we applied for through that United for Ukraine. I don't know if anybody heard about that. The Biden administration put through this. It's like a fast track refugee kind of a thing. We put through the paperwork, and it was fast. Within 2 weeks, we got her over here. So she's living with us now.
Nice.
So we're relieved at that. And our next mission is to get her brother and his family over here, and that's looking promising as well. Naturally, Maxime serving his country over there. We started the paperwork. She wanted to bring him over. We started that before the war, and that actually, of course, that shut that down. So we'll see what happens. This war can't last forever, and if you've been following the news lately, we're kicking some Russian butt right now. So anyway, I think that's pretty well covered it. Just not.
Going back?
If somebody sponsored me, I will. I'd do it in a heartbeat. One other thing, we made the funny papers here. And I mentioned it in the article. I said, I'd go back in a heartbeat. But I don't know if you guys read the Lititz record, but we made the front page. I don't know if you can. It's a little bit fuzzy. So anyway, I'll leave you with this. The most famous words that are going on in Ukraine: Slava Ukraina. It's glory to Ukraine. Any questions?
What was your travel time? The time you left home until you arrived at the border? How many hours or days?
Well, of course, it's a 2-hour drive to Dulles, and then a 3-hour drive maybe. And then it's about an 8-hour flight to Istanbul, and then another hour. It's actually not very far from Istanbul to Bucharest. And then from there, it was a 6-hour train ride to Sarajevo, and then an hour cab ride, I guess you might say. And then when Taras, my brother-in-law, picked us up, it was about another 45 minutes to an hour to Chernivtsi. So it was a long trip. Let's say. And then, like I said, the one time when we came back, we had about an 8-hour layover in Istanbul, so that added to it. So yep. So.
How far into the war did you make these trips?
It was still fairly recent. I think
the beginning.
If you saw that one photo of my wife, she's wearing a heavy coat, so it was still the invasion started in late February. I would say it was probably March, late March, something to that effect. So that's why I said, the supply chain, we couldn't ship anything over there that we were aware of. The only thing we could do is ship it to Poland. And like I was saying, they have this huge supply center or whatever it is, and we don't know if it's going to go where we want it to go or not. And that's why we made the decision to fly over. So, but it was definitely a long haul. That's why my wife, I said, stay home this time. It's a long way. And but I'll tell you, like I said, there are things, there's different places where something could have happened. My flight could have been delayed in Istanbul. I could have missed my connection. Everything just went perfectly. I was really fortunate in that regard. So.
Did you have any problems with customs carrying, audio and?
Well, like I was saying, like when we went through, and Dulles was the same way. It's funny, Dulles, I was kind of late getting there. It was still an hour to go for the flight, but those overseas flights, they want to button up within an hour. And I was, I checked in, and I said, oh, good, no line. And I went through customs, and they even pulled the thing out of the body armor. They knew what I was doing. They knew where I was going. They were great. That was the only issue. As far as getting into Ukraine, they knew what we were doing too. I mean, they knew we were there to help them. And they just stamped my passport and went right across. So no problem at all.
Well, you had to go through customs in Turkey too, right?
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, like even though you're making a connecting flight, you're not leaving the airport. I would have thought, you wouldn't have to do that, but no, you do. They didn't check our bags or anything like that. Their bags went to the plane. It's just that you had to go through. They checked all your your visa, passport, or what have you. So that wasn't a problem at all. And Turkey's a NATO country, so like I said, I'm far from the only one that was doing all this stuff, I'm sure. So, but anyway,
Jim.
Sure.
So, how can us as individuals help? Is there like a GoFundMe site if we wanted to donate?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I think technically my GoFundMe site is still on there. I haven't looked at it in weeks and weeks, and I did notice nothing's going on there because I haven't really been putting out for it. But there's certainly all kinds of organizations. There was just recently a fundraiser at I forget where it was, over in Ronks, I think, or something like that. There was one over in Africa a couple months before we left, and you can certainly do that. Like I was saying, I mean, if some wealthy benefactor came across and just wrote me a check, I'd be over there in a heartbeat, because we know how to do it now. So but I appreciate that. I know a lot of people are, they're really cheering on the Ukrainians. They're basically the point of the spear right now as far as fighting against totalitarianism and what have you, I think. And they're doing a great job, and fortunately we're giving them a ton of support. And I think that was critical. So, they got the Russians on the run now. It's like just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of what Putin's going to do next. Who knows? So, anyway, I was told 20 minutes. I better get off. So yeah, I exceeded that.
No.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.